Hello and welcome to this conversation we are having at ORF. It's a digital conversation, a conversation for our times when we are living with COVID-19. Today we are going to talk about this entire disruption which has happened in India's efforts to combat COVID-19 because of the event at Nizamuddin where the Tablighi Jamaat held a huge gathering, and there were people in the Markaz over there, people who were coming from all across the country, and without the administration even getting a wind of it, people went back to their respective states and they carried the virus back with them. So now we have a situation where infection has been carried to previously uninfected places like the Andamans. We have people who have carried it back to Uttar Pradesh, to Telangana, to Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Kashmir, Assam, and of course Delhi. And in the last 72 hours, most of the new cases which have come to the fore are people who were at the Tablighi Jamaat event. So I think we need to look beyond what happened at the Markaz. We need to look at three aspects. One, was there a policing stroke intelligence failure because of which the administration now looks as if it did not act in time? Two, what has also emerged is that all these Tablighi Jamaat clerics who came in from abroad, they came on tourist visas, which they are most welcome to come because if they are coming for tourism purposes, not for these reasons. So was there a failure? And is our visa regime due for a thorough overhaul? And third part of it. We have to about the politics of allowing certain events while shutting down that were also scheduled. And my reference, of course, is to the Ram Navami event, which was cancelled, and very good that the government cancelled it and prohibited any gathering. Yet, in Nizamuddin, this event continued and nothing happened, no effort was made to stop it. Let me begin with Mr. Vikram Sood, my senior colleague at ORF. Mr. Sood is the former head of R&AW, and he is known globally for his for the path-breaking work he has done on intelligence gathering. Mr. Sood, was there an intelligence stroke policing failure in this whole affair?
Well, it's difficult to say whether there was intelligence failure because failure to act doesn't necessarily mean failure of intelligence. There could be many other reasons. Intelligence failure is either you didn't have the information, you had inexact information, or you had correct information, but nobody acted on it. So that aspect I don't know, but I don't buy the belief that the police may not have known anything. So there is somewhere a gap between the knowledge and the action that is required. And there are many suggestions being made, I see on Twitter, that why didn't the intelligence act? Now, the intelligence will not act on its own information. We are a democracy. The intelligence agencies give the information. It's for the policymakers and the administrators to decide what to do with that information. Thank God we are not like the ISI or the KGB or the Ministry of State Security that you act on your own intelligence. So the problem is somewhere in between. A political decision, an administrative decision, I don't know.
Or could it have been a policing failure because the police did speak to them on the 23rd of March? I'm just going by information available in the public domain. The police spoke to them on 23rd March, and yet for almost more than a week, nothing was done to disband the gathering.
You see, that's speculative. I don't know what was going on in the government circles, what action or what were they planning to do about this information. We saw those clips where that SHO, I think, is speaking to 4 of their
Yeah, that's the 23rd
representatives.
of March.
Sorry?
I think that was on 23rd of March.
Yes. So he was speaking to them and he was telling them, but I don't know what happened after that. I don't know what was the reason why they didn't do anything after that. And we also don't know what actually eventually triggered it off. What was it suddenly that they wanted to do something? Maybe my co-panelists will know better.
I will take this conversation to my other senior colleague, Navdeep Suri. Navdeep, he's a veteran diplomat. He's served as head of mission across the world. Navdeep, is there a problem with India's visa regime? Now, every time something like this happens, government makes a statement that we are going to become very strict. Now, of course, they have said that we will not allow people who come in on a tourist visa to participate in religious activities. And a second statement came in that we will not allow tourist visa to be used for evangelism and preaching. Now, why do we need to do that? This law already exists. This rule exists. Why is it that government has time and again failed to implement something so fundamental and basic like a tourist visa cannot be used for purposes other than tourism?
Kanchan, having been on the other side, we've often felt that our visa regime is actually much too complicated. At this point of time in the year 2020, we have 18 categories of visa. And those categories range from tourism to business to student to conference to research to missionary, right? The clear objective of the government of India, reiterated time and again, is we want more tourism inflows, right? Last year, we got, I think, about 11 million tourists into India. They contributed 2.2 lakh crore rupees in terms of foreign exchange. Now, we have started e-visa over the last several years. And because of the e-visa system, where the applicant overseas applies online, it doesn't come to the diplomatic missions. It goes straight to the MHA. The Ministry of Home Affairs database compares it. And if there is nothing on the record against that individual, within 72 hours, that individual gets a confirmation that this is your e-visa. We've seen these as reforms to streamline and facilitate more and more people to come to India and grow our tourism industry, which gives employment to millions of people. Now, your point, how do you prevent abuse of a relaxed visa regime for tourists? I really don't see how you allow a minuscule number to distort a larger purpose of growing tourism economy in India. The restriction is, okay, he should have taken a missionary visa if he intends to proselytize, if he intends to preach. But if he is only attending a gathering, he can do it on a tourist visa. Do you want the local beat constable to be knocking on somebody's shoulder and saying, show me your passport or show me your visa, I want to see what kind of a visa you're on, the moment he sees a foreigner? I mean, it would really make a mess of our tourism promotion policy. So at the local level, at the police level, if you have confirmed information that there are people coming into a religious congregation and they should have missionary visas as opposed to tourist visas, yes, be focused, go there, do a check, what kind of a visa do you have? But don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. I just want to make one additional point that for other religious congregations, we have people coming from across the world for the Radha Swami satsangs in Beas. We have people from across the world coming for Buddhist events in Sadhnath or Kashi or elsewhere. We have other religious denominations coming in for major events. Religious tourism itself is a form of tourism that we have been trying to promote. So I would say that it's something that we must look at with a great deal of caution and let the cure not be worse than the disease. And keep in mind that these guys came, their congregation that they came for was March 13 to 15, which means they probably obtained their visas in February or earlier when there were no restrictions. So in getting those visas, they were not necessarily...
I don't think we shouldn't sort of get stuck on what happened at Nizamuddin Markaz. But I'm making a bigger point over here. In the past, we have had a situation where David Headley was given a tourist visa. He enters the country and he lays the ground for the 26/11 attacks. We have seen an American citizen who came in on a tourist visa and then went to try and evangelize on a North Sentinel Island. He was killed by the tribals over there. So,
but Kanchan,
no, I take your point. I take your point that religious tourism is important. It brings in money. It helps the economy. But this is not religious tourism. We are talking about religious events where individuals are flown in or they come in or they are invited and they come in on a tourist visa and they are preaching or they are giving or they are indulging in evangelism or proselytization. So which I will just quickly go to Mr. Sood. Mr. Sood, 11 million is a very small number given the number of tourists which visit smaller countries. Why is it that we are unable to keep track? I mean, I don't want the local Thanedar to go and check on visas. But is there some sort, I mean, shouldn't we make institutions responsible that, look, if you are found to be violating this rule, next time onwards, no visas for your invitees?
I'm sure we have enough rules of that kind in existence. I don't know. I think we do. The host is responsible for his guest when he visits. So, but we are great ones for not implementing any rule. People just get away with it. It's either because we don't have the means to do it or we don't have the willpower to do it. I think it's a bit of both. Yeah, it's up chalta hai kind of thing. Nothing matters till it goes wrong. And this is a case where everything just went wrong. They came on a visa, they overstayed, they dispersed, they mingled when they shouldn't have, so on and so forth. So I don't see that there is any violation, that we don't have the means to keep a watch except a physical limitation of the police constable to be able to watch everyone. Like it happened in these riots also. We're just not enough men to handle it. Not enough men to handle Shaheen Bagh, it seems, or women in that case. So it's a lack of resources also.
Sushant, is it a question of lack of political will, which cuts across governments?
No, you can call it a bit of political will, but I think, there are a couple of points I want to make. The first point is that if, as Ambassador Suri is saying, and I don't, in principle, I don't have any disagreement with everything he has said, but then don't have the kind of classification you have if you don't intend to follow that through, number one. Number two, I have nothing against religious tourism, but you also have to look at the people who are coming for this kind of tourism and what is the purpose. Tablighi Jamaat over a couple of decades, last couple of decades, has developed a bit of a dubious reputation. Please remember that people like Masood Azhar also came to India for the reasons of proselytization, and that is how these guys were caught. In the case of the Markaz, even if somebody has come on a tourist visa, you have a cop station right next door to the Markaz. Surely if so many foreigners are landing up out there, so many foreigners are hanging out there, somebody should ask on what visas these guys have come. Some agencies should be exchanging some notes, and to say that they just came to attend a religious gathering, I don't think that's entirely true, because if they were attending a religious gathering, then how the hell are they being found in middle of nowhere in Ranchi and Munger and I don't know which other place in India. So clearly these guys have been traveling, they've been proselytizing, and all of that activity has been taking place. So either you make a rule which you want to follow through with, or you scrap that rule and then you take it, in a peaceful way. And finally, that particular clip which is doing the rounds, I would imagine that somewhere along the line, the police officer gave whatever instruction he had to give. But please remember that the people he was talking to were also giving him certain assurances. Maybe he took them on good faith, because this thing has not been happening only this year. It's been happening over the last 40, 50 years now. And the Tablighi Jamaat has a footprint in over 150 countries. There are people who travel during the Ijtima from all over the world, who come to India, who go to Pakistan, who go to Bangladesh and other places. And this has been happening for donkey's years. And everybody was, pretty blasé about it. And nobody really bothered about it. Just as everything else is going to change after this damn virus crisis is over, perhaps we'll also change the way we are going to handle these kind of congregations and people who come on different visas and violate their visa regulations. Perhaps that too will need to change, and change drastically. And one final point: the 11 million tourists, I would imagine that the overwhelming majority of those are essentially Indian diaspora people who are coming back every year. I don't know how many of them are first time or second time tourists, from any of these other countries who just come for the point of view of tourism. Most of them are probably coming to meet their families, coming back home for a couple of days, weeks, months, and that's about it.
So that would mean that the real number of people the government needs to watch out for is way much less than 11 million. So that makes the task even more easier. Sood Saab, which brings me back to the first question. It's very strange. You read about foreigners being discovered in a place of worship in Ranchi, and the police knew nothing about it. The city administration, the district administration knew nothing about it. It required a killer virus to discover that there are foreigners living for a considerable period of time in various places around the country.
So, that's the responsibility of each local state administration. Neither the Intelligence Bureau nor the R&AW is going to do anything about it. They passed on the information. The local government is supposed to be handling it, picking up people if they have to, or whatever they want to do. It is not for the central authorities to do anything after they've given the information of any fear or any apprehension that there may be a security aspect involved. Beyond that, how do you keep a watch? Except that the state governments have to do it where they're going. If they leave Delhi, who knows? Who knows where they've gone from? FRRO would know, should know. Do they tell the FRRO where they've gone?
No, but FRRO has to be more proactive. And today we are paying the price for FRRO not being proactive, for the government as an institution not being proactive, for the district administration not being proactive. And this is a mess, let's admit it.
FRRO is understaffed, it's overworked. To expect that they are able to be really proactive, I don't think that's a practical thing until and unless you're going to resource them. And frankly, nobody wants to resource them. It's just not what we do. So that is why I'm saying that unless you change the way you are working these systems, you will continue to have these kind of disasters waiting to happen.
I just want to say that there is one other point of check, which is the immigration. When person arrives at our immigration counter, this is not usually a young person, usually single, not with a family, usually not the kind of typical profile of a tourist that you would be getting into the country. And that is the point where you can ask for the purpose of the visit, and you can match that purpose of the visit with the kind of visa that that person is carrying. But remember that unless somebody is on an MHA blacklist, under current systems, the tourist visa can be obtained pretty much automatically. The missionary visa may or may not be obtained by the applicant unless we have systems of checking it. And yes, the point that was made earlier is that the host has to be held responsible. That is the only way to try and enforce it. Otherwise, we will end up complicating issues more.
Okay. So we need to wrap up. Quick 30-second comments by each one of the panelists, beginning with Mr. Sood.
I think what we'll have to do is that we'll have to revamp the systems of allowing people in and then watching them, because we are not living in a normal neighborhood. We have a neighborhood on both sides which is inimical to us. So we just can't treat ourselves like Switzerland and then people can come in and go as they please. Even they have restrictions. But do we have the means to do it? Do we have the means even to check half of the 5 million, 10 million, 11 million that come in? And out of that, there are probably only a few that you need to watch. But then James Hadley case is another fellow. James Hadley, whatever his name is.
David Hadley.
Yes. David Hadley. So when we don't have the means to do it, that is the whole problem. How many have said there should be reforms in the police system?
Navdeep, quick comments, closing comments.
I just made it that, don't tamper with the visa issuing system. Have the checks at the Indian side and have those checks first at the point of immigration, and then with the hosts who are organizing congregations or events that are of something of a nature that you want to keep a watch over. But otherwise, our visa system currently is complicated enough. Mercifully, it is getting better. Allow those reforms to continue.
Sushant?
So I think the most important is that the sense of entitlement and impunity, which many people in this country seem to have, needs to end. As long as you have that sense in people, you will continue to have, witness scenes of the sorts we have witnessed right now. On the whole visa regime, I think some things need to be fixed, because if you have people like Masood Azhar coming in on a tourist visa, you have Umar Sheikh of British Pakistani origin who is now being let loose by the Pakistani courts, who's a murderer. He has been let loose. When you have people like him coming up on a tourist visa simply because he knew somebody, his father was a rich guy, this guy was a London School of Economics guy. Now, how do you study the profiles of people and make sure that the bad guys don't come in, or at least you're able to keep a lookout on the bad guys? I think that's something which both Mr. Suri and Mr. Sood's former departments will really have to apply their minds on, along with their country cousins. Because until and unless you really start fixing this, you will have disaster after disaster on your hands, especially now when the Pakistanis are becoming hyperactive and they are going to use all these tools to try and damage you as best as they can. So I think we really need to think this thing through.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Sood. Thank you, Navdeep. Thank you, Sushant. We'll bring you further digital conversations on a host of topics and ideas, especially issues which are connected to COVID-19 and India's war on the killer virus. Thank you once again.